Okay, so just a couple things from staff real quick. So Kim is on standby to order lunch. I wasn't sure what everyone wanted or diet.
Sushi,
So,
can she go up tomorrow?
yeah, it may be tomorrow's lunch, but we can make that happen.
Yeah, the sushi restaurant here, I don't think I'd eat.
I don't think I would either. Yeah.
Last time I had fish in Colorado was with the whole next day in bed.
But think about that. We can order whatever as we get closer to noon and get hungry and have it delivered here. But other than that, I think we're ready to get started. So I'll let the chair have at it.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order and do a roll call.
Yeah, absolutely. So Joe. Present. Lee. Amanda.
Here.
Ashley. Here. And sorry, Jason.
Here.
It's been a morning.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Jason, you're here. Okay. We're ready to get started. All right, so we wanted to kind of go over our budget and everything in detail. So I'm definitely let Cheryl talk about the actual finances and the numbers. And we do have some handouts for you all. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
No, just the next batch.
Oh, here.
Roll stack. That's what
Okay. So I was going to start and just talk in general about how our budget gets created for our annual cycle. And so we are on a calendar year fiscal cycle. So basically January 1st to December 31st is our budget cycle. Some places, there's state agencies. Is it all of the states that's on? Okay. So the state has opposing fiscal cycles. So they're from July 1 to June 30th. And so we kind of have to balance that. And that's not uncommon, but I think it makes it easier to be on a calendar cycle. So what we do is in about this time of year, we start requesting from departments to fill out a general budget request. And it's just preliminary things. Thinking about next year, what are your major needs? What do you want to request? Do you want to have any position staffing changes, requesting new positions, that type of thing? What vehicles need to be replaced? What are your operational expenses that you're eyeing for 2024? So we start kind of getting that into what I would call the funnel, and then it starts trickling down. And the first step is for me to get the recommendations. So after the departments submit their departmental requests, Cheryl reviews it, I review it, and we just kind of look for any anomalies. Usually departments are well trained, but we're looking for things like you want to buy an 18-wheel semi-truck so you can do something fancy with it or something. We're probably going to say no to that. So those types of requests, very interested in new positions, any programmatic changes or anything like that. I would say the majority of our departments, their budget doesn't change much between the fiscal years. It's just maybe expenses that increase. Fuel tends to be something that we see going up. But what Cheryl does a really, really good job of is tracking our revenues. And so even at this point, we have an idea of what we're projecting revenues a year out, and it's guesswork. Anybody knows, who knows what can happen with the economy, but we do our best to try to project that. So give you a specific example, for lodging tax, the new hotel coming online, so we do kind of some calculations based on other hotels and factor that into what we're projecting in our revenues. So that way we have a pretty conservative number, but an idea of how much money we have to work with. So from there, I would say 100% of the time, we get significantly more requests from our department than we have money to fund, which is always going to be the case. We're always going to have more problems here in the community than we have money available to solve those problems. So that's where it really gets challenging. And that's where the fun begins, I would say, where we have to chop down millions of dollars in requests and really make sense as to what the priorities are for the community. So that's kind of how that works. You all on the lodging tax side, what we'll do is kind of put the budget numbers together as they were presented last year, which you'll see today as well. But I think 2024 is going to be vastly different on the lodging tax side. And we also have the wrinkle for you all of the proposed lodging tax increase in November. So I'll let Cheryl talk about that a little bit more in detail. But right now, what we're suggesting is we kind of put loosely together a budget at 3% and loosely a budget at 6%. just so we have those scenarios covered. Should we get that increase in November, then we can move forward with the 6% budget and make tweaks for a couple of months and make sure we have something we're very happy with. I think, as I mentioned before, Parks and Rec is really interested in working with you all on the development of that component of the lodging tax fund, and so I think a joint session with you all in August would be very beneficial to kind of hear from them what they're seeing in the Parks and Rec community and put some ideas together. But it's a very detailed process. The last thing I'll say is we just last week got our audit report from last year. So we're required by the state auditor to every year go through an annual audit. And so an independent firm comes in and reviews all of our funds, but they also do spot checks. They'll ask us for anything from payroll records to contracts to receipts to work orders to things that, what are the tickets that are issued at the landfill, landfill tickets, all of that. So they go through the fine-tooth comb and just look for anything. I have not had a chance to read the audit. It's fresh off the plate, but I don't think that there's any major findings at this point. So, and we typically haven't seen findings in the past, which speaks, I think, to Cheryl's good work in managing our finance. But I'll turn it over to you at this point to kind of go specifically over some of our numbers for lodging tax.
Okay, so the first handout that you have is the actual 2023 budget for the tourism fund. You'll see that the city budgeted revenues of $454,000, expenditures of $657,000, and then the change in fund balance of $152,000. Typically, departments are requested to keep their budgets flat, which means revenues equal expenses. So if we budget $500,000 in revenues, you should budget $500,000 in expenses. Because tourism has a healthy fund balance, it was suggested that they start spending it down. We are taxing for lodging for a purpose. We need to be spending that fund balance down. So what happened in 2022 is I can't remember, did we dip into
2022, we had contemplated it, but I'm not sure we actually did.
I can't remember. Anyway, in 2022, we over-collected revenues, which means there was an increase to fund balance. So whenever we under-expend and over-collect revenues, that means there's an increase in fund balance. If it's vice versa, there would be a decrease in fund balance. The purpose of the budget is both external and internal. We put out the budget to speak to the community to tell them what we intend to do with revenues that are collected. It's an in-house tool to let staff know, hey, you have this much budgeted in salaries, this much in gas, this much in trolley, and so it's a tool on both sides of the plate. Anyway, whenever we overexpend a budget based on what was budgeted in the typical year, so if we budget $500,000, we spend $525,000, that could be an audit finding. So in that situation, we would have to get the new we would have to amend the budget, get it to council, have it approved before December 31st so that we don't get into trouble. So we haven't had that trouble with tourism. However, last year I did amend the budget because they chose to buy a vehicle and that was not budgeted. So we did amend last year's budget. Okay, so that said, I mean, you can peek through, you can see the revenues and expenses. In August, when we are determining the following year budget, that's when we go through and we project what we believe we're going to spend through fiscal year end. So it's a guessing game. We've collected so much in revenue. It looks like we're going to collect this much more based on prior year's collections. And so I said, all right, we're going to collect $478,000 in revenue for tourism fund. And in the end, we ended up collecting $492,000. So it's just a guessing game. But this is what is required by the state. They want the actual of the prior year, our projected, and then what we're asking for in the upcoming year. So that's just a little brief synopsis of the 2023 budget.
Any questions to that point?
And just purely curiosity, with the new hotel building and trying to figure out how increase in revenue?
Yeah.
Is that basically just the same number of people coming, it's just spread out across more hotels, or is there a reason that this better hotel, the bigger hotel would attract people from other, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would say that remains to be seen.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's unknown.
So we're very conservative in our projections because we don't want to underestimate what the revenues might be. And so we actually have had this similar conversations, Amanda, of, are we just going to kind of redistribute who's already coming to Trinidad? Or are we going to see people actually come to this new hotel as a destination and be an attraction for more people to
I
stay
think
here?
the side has marketing research on any of that based on Hilton Garden statistics or something.
Yeah, we can definitely chat with Sai and see if she has any thoughts on that. It's
It's
part of it.
probably marginal. I just didn't know if it was like-
But it's a good question. I mean,
The average cost per room might be higher, which might bump revenue a little bit, but it's probably not a huge jump.
I think
I know a
that,
lot of people at Airbnb say that they seem to see a downturn this year.
Yeah.
In their Airbnbs, and I know a lot of Airbnb people speak to me, saying they're very against increasing the lodging tax revenue. You have to realize that a lot of systems in this can have Airbnbs.
well, and I think the good news for the new hotel though is since it's opening now, we're going to have a little bit of historical data to put into our revenue projections for next year. So hopefully as we get closer to the end, we'll see whether or not we're showing an impact of that or not.
And regarding revenue for the new hotel, when we were putting this budget together, Sai recommended that we increase. So if you look at the 22 projected revenue of 395,000, she thought that $50,000 increase for the new hotel would be a good target. But I think they were thinking the hotel would open in March. So we put in $50,000. I don't know. We don't know yet. When did they open?
They opened this week.
Yeah,
this past week, yeah.
So we won't even be able to dip our toes in till October.
Exactly.
We'll have an idea, possibly, so this week is what, July? August,
Yeah.
Yeah, October 20th would be their first quarterly lodging tax due. So then we'd have an idea. And then on that fact, July, August, and September are our major tourism months. So whatever number that is, we just project that. We take that into consideration and project a little bit less because they're going to collect more in this quarter. Okay, so no further questions. We're going to move on to the current budget through June 30th, 2023. You'll see at this point in the percent used column, we should be at 50%. The first page is our revenue. You can see that we're only 27% collected in lodging tax. That's because it's a quarterly collection and we won't receive lodging tax until the end. They have until the end of this month to submit. So we're collecting lodging tax right now, but it won't post until July. And
Based on historical, do you expect that new report to go take us up to 50%?
oh yeah, absolutely. We should get there. And then we just have, we have a little, the fund balance is sitting in an investment fund, it's collecting interest, and then there's just, we do transfer in $50,000 from marijuana revenue to cover a portion of Marty's salary.
Yeah, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. So, so not all of the Welcome Center expenses are borne out of the lodging tax fund. Some of them are, but to Cheryl's point, we also offset Marty's salary with some general fund revenue as well. Is there anything else we're offsetting that you can think of? Okay.
And then the next two pages are current expenditures, including purchase orders that are outstanding. Again, you should be at 50%, 51% is for the Welcome Center, 50.6% in tourism. A lot of that has to do with encumbrances. At the beginning of the year, we create purchase orders for janitorial service, for all the billboards, everything. So that actually pledges that money, and even though it's not expended, it's locked up. So that's why some of the amounts are, that's what would put us over 50%. But through the end of the year, it'll taper off, it'll bounce down. again, if we see that there's markers that we are gonna overexpend, we have to take it forth to council and tell them that we're gonna overexpend the budget. But I don't see that happening this year. You can see the trolley is underexpended at 10%, just because we didn't have our trolley driver. But overall, the budget is at 48.7% in expenditures, and that's perfect. We're fine. We're right where we need to be. So I know that there were questions about fund balance. The best way that I can describe fund balance is pretend your parents have this amazing savings account for you with $100,000 in it. And they send you away to college. And they know that you're gonna earn $50,000 in scholarships and in a job. And then they know that your expenditures in tuition and room and board are gonna be $50,000. So they don't have to dip into the $100,000 savings account because you have 50 in revenue, 50 in expenses. That's called a flat budget. So your little $100,000 savings account stays intact, not touched. When you come back from school, maybe you earned $50,000, but your expenses were only $40,000. So that $10,000 gets bumped into the savings account. So now you have a $110,000 fund balance. That's how fund balance works. If you have $50,000 in wages and scholarships, but your school expenses are going to be $75,000, that's when you dip into fund balance. And that's going to give you that extra $25,000 to cover your expenses. So that's the best way I think that I can explain fund balance. If we take a look at the 2022 fiscal year ending actual expenditures, these are the actuals that are in the audit, that were audited and put together as our final figures. The first page shows $492,000 in revenue. And then the second page shows expenses of $416,000. So we had an increase of $76,000 to fund balance. And if you look at the very last page, or second to last page, you'll see the actual column where it shows our $442,000 in revenue and our expenses, and that increase of $76,000. So right now, tourism is sitting on a fund balance of $535,000.
Yeah. And what should that fund balance be? What would be our dream fund
I
balance?
think our fund balance should be no more than $200,000.
Okay.
It's too high. We need to spend it. They bought a vehicle. I'm still not spending it. So I gotta figure out how to allocate those on some good projects.
One-time project.
Yes, one time, exactly. Let's see.
Sorry, hopefully this is making some sense to you all. I know
Yes,
we're
No,
a lot of
this is
things.
just.
Okay, good.
Alrighty, so Steve did speak about creating the 2024 budget. That budget is due to the city manager by August 1st. All of our departments have been tasked with turning in their budgets by August 1st. The first budget draft goes to city council by the first meeting in October. So between August 1st and October, first meeting, we sit down with staff and we project our revenues, we project our expenses. If expenses are more than revenues, we have to shave it down, get the scissors, cut things out. And it's a difficult process. It's going to be even more difficult this year because sales tax didn't come in where we imagined it would, and same thing with marijuana. Marijuana has tanked quite a bit. When marijuana goes down, so does our general sales tax. So the good thing about our marijuana sales tax is we use a pay-go system, which means once we earn it, then we allocate it, which would be nice to do with all budgets.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be affected on the marijuana side because we don't budget ongoing expenses with marijuana. We pretty much use it for one-time expenses. Anyway, that's just a little side note.
What's that?
I just did that smart though.
It
Yeah,
is.
we
It's
should do
really
a call.
policy. Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll be putting those budgets together, and I'm not sure how Steve will.
Well, yeah, so for lodging tax, what we will do is put together some semblance of a draft budget for you all to review as a starting point, and then it'll be under your purview to kind of make recommendations from there. And fortunately, we have a lot of time. Like I said before, we have that November ballot question that might throw a wrinkle into things. But I think in August, if we can have you take the first crack, maybe at your first meeting looking at it, and then maybe the second meeting in August would be a good one to do our joint work session with the Parks and Rec board.
Who creates that? Your son.
Who creates that budget?
Yes.
That will come up to you all. So we'll just take last year's budget, and we're probably not going to make many changes to the line items until you guys have had a chance to review it. So it should look very similar.
Based on the new percentage.
Based on the new percentages, yeah.
Because based on the percentages, we spent a lot on the Welcome Center. Probably makes some good solutions there.
Okay, yeah, and we have, like Cheryl said, close to $335,000 that we really do need to spend down as well. So we can talk about that a little bit either today or when we get to the budget meeting in August. So,
Okay, any other questions? So now we'll move on to the City of Trinidad purchasing policy. This is just internal. This is our internal policy. It was a temporary policy back when I kind of was getting my feet wet with the city. And we just haven't moved forward with adopting a formal policy, which someday we'll get to that when we're not busy. However, this is required of all departments. Any purchases less than $1,000 require quotes. They require a quote. Then they have to get a purchase order and approved by me, and then you can make your purchase. This is when it starts to get a little nitty-gritty. When we have purchases greater than $1,000, 3 quotes are required. We want to make sure that we're spending taxpayer dollars to the best of our ability. More bang for the buck. We have to have 3 quotes. They do have to have a purchase order, and then let's get authorization from myself to make the purchase. And then finally, purchases greater than $10,000 and $50,000 get a little bit, the requirements are a little tighter. When it's greater than $10,000, we have to have 3 informal written bids, and then it requires Steve's signature. And then when there's greater than $50,000 purchases, that comes actually that has to be RFP or RFP process, which I think Steve will talk about in a little bit. But the most important thing is that expenditures aren't made without our knowledge. I mean, even though it's been budgeted, we need to know. We don't want any surprises. We don't need, if their budget is $20,000 and they're already at the $18,000 mark and they decide to spend $10,000 more, they're not going to have it. We need to be able to monitor that in-house and make sure that budgets don't get overextended it has to be a legitimate reason. If the air conditioning goes out in the building, okay, that's a legitimate reason, but situations like that.
So in a situation like the social media, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to go to 3 different quotes, right? I mean, that's
depends on the dollar threshold. So
okay,
whatever we're
it's
anticipating.
a $20,000 expenditure.
Right.
Have you already gone through that?
No, so we would need to get 3 independent quotes, and then technically you would go with the best obtainable price. But there's some things in there where if it was a business that sells used tires and they bid on it and said we can do it for $20, obviously we're going to kick out that quote. We also give a deadline for those quotes, and sometimes we'll send it out to people and they'll be non-responsive, and so you may end up with 1 or 2 quotes instead of the 3 required. But as long as you're adhering to that deadline, you can move forward at that point.
But the major rule of thumb is that staff or boards are not able to encumber funds without permission. So at one time we had a board that procured a service, had the service, we'll just say, constructed, and then all of a sudden whoever delivers them to the front door, we had no idea that they existed. Staff had nowhere to put them. Staff didn't know if we had permission to put them out. There's guidelines that we have to follow. Sometimes we have to talk to CDOT, and sometimes we have right-of-way exclusions. And so that's why boards have to work with their liaisons in order to make sure that we know and we have the place and first of all, the means to pay and the place to put them, or we have permission to whatever this project was. We just have to make sure that it all meets city guidelines. So that's our purchasing policy, and then just this is a checklist that kind of breaks down the purchasing policy, and staff is required to complete these whenever their purchases are greater than $1,000 and moving on up. We also have a travel policy. If tourism board, I'm going to tell you all right now, if you all decide to travel and you want us to pay for it, you have to follow our policy. It's not going to work if you want to go to a conference in Breckenridge and you pay for it and you pay tax. If we reimburse you, first of all, we're only going to reimburse you at the government service, the GSA rate, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So if the hotel at this time in Breckenridge is allowed $175 and you pay $200, you're only going to be reimbursed $175 and you won't be reimbursed tax. So please go through Brittany if you decide to travel.
Yeah.
Same thing for registrations for conferences, registrations for hotels. Brittany knows how to handle all of that. So if you decide to start traveling, please go through Brittany. She also handles the per diem because you're allotted meals and mileage when you travel. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, and I just want to talk a little bit about formal bids, informal bids, RFPs, and how those all work. So you can see the thresholds for when we have to do certain things. In general, if it's under $20,000, we'll ask for three written quotes, and we want to make sure we're soliciting that out to everyone, apples and oranges. So the best thing to do, apples and apples. The best thing to do would be to send an email that has the same specs of what we were asking for to 3 different vendors. So if you call one and say, hey, we're looking for 3 new tires, right? And then you call someone else and you say, we're looking for 4 new tires, that's a different quote. So we need to be very careful on that. So those are what we call best obtainable price. So really, again, the lowest quote is who we should go with unless there's some big reason that we can document as to why they would be able to perform those services. So then you get up to anything above $20,000. I'm sorry, above $10,000, and that's when it requires the informal bids. And so for that, Cheryl and I were trying to figure out what informal bids actually are versus quotes.
Over 10.
Yeah.
What I've been doing is 3 written quotes.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. So still kind of the same quote process, I think is a good way to look at that. When you get over $50,000 for services, we're required to do an RFP, and for any goods and tangible items, we would do a request for invitation for bids, an IFP. And so what that means is, like for First Street is a great example. It's a $5 million project. When we bid that out, we put every brick, every piece of concrete that's going to be laid, every piece of curb and gutter, every infrastructure piece that we're putting all into what's called a bid tabulation sheet. And the respondents have to go through and actually put a price for every single little item on that project, which is a lot of work for them, but it really, enables us to make sure they're not gouging us for something and that type of thing. So in that case, we would go with the lowest qualified bidder, and so whoever came in with the best overall price gets the bid. But it's really important that us as a city goes through with a fine-tooth comb and checks their bid tabulation to make sure that they didn't forget to include a half mile worth of asphalt or whatever for 75% fewer bricks than they need. Because if that's the case, then we would be looking at change orders, so we can disqualify them if it's not accurate. But at the end of the day, we're going to go with the lowest qualified bidder, which is probably the best from a finance standpoint for government procurement, but it's not always the best for a quality standpoint, which is too bad because sometimes if we worked with a vendor in the past, they can do the job, but we're not sure it's going to be a great product, but we still may have to go with them because of the low bid. There are some ways around that. If it was a very specific project that we were very passionate about, we could do a qualifications-based bid. So we're looking at price as an evaluation factor, but a part of the weight of scoring them would also be on their qualifications and ability to perform the work. So fortunately, there are some workarounds. For any services, architectural, engineering, any professional services, we would do an RFP. And in that case, we solicit it out, and we have a very strict format for how they have to respond. and there's actual questions that we ask them to address, give us their qualifications, how they're going to approach the work, and we evaluate those independent of pricing. So when we go through and score the RFPs, typically a committee is created, and you want to get as diverse a committee as possible to get different perspectives. You would just read the actual RFP and score them based on their ability to do the work. And then thereafter, you look at pricing. And whoever scored the highest, the hope is that you can negotiate a reasonable price with them and make sure that it fits within the budget. So that's kind of how that works. Any questions on the procurement vehicles? It takes a lot of time. Cheryl's right. We don't really have we don't have a contracts administrator or anything like that, so departments are doing this work on their own, and we're expecting them to be trained on good government procurement practices. Eventually, we would like to get somebody in our finance department who can focus on purchasing and really standardize all of our boilerplates for our RFPs and bids and make sure that we're doing this as easy as possible. It's much easier to train one person to do the job full time than it is to train an entire staff of people to have to understand all these rules. But that position would be probably doing some other things as well, but I think it would be more than justified. The other thing we're looking at that's probably important for you all is increasing our procurement thresholds. They're awfully low right now comparatively. So for example, the state, I believe like their bid requirement is $250,000. And so they can do quotes for anything less than $250,000, which is a ridiculous number. But you can imagine things the state's purchasing probably makes sense for them. But for us, we do want to increase it from 50,000 probably to 100,000, just to give us a little bit more flexibility. And just for example, vehicle purchases at this point, you can't find a vehicle under $55,000, and so we're necessarily having to do a formal bid for those, or find another procurement mechanism. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that we do have another benefit being a local entity in that we can do what's called piggybacking off of other contracts. So there's a bunch of statewide pricing agreements through the Colorado State Procurement Office, and we're eligible to procure goods and services off of those already competitively bid agreements. So that makes our job a little bit easier. Instead of having to go through a month-long process of doing an RFP, sometimes we can just pick it from a third-party vendor. Where that really comes in handy is for apparatus, so fire trucks, equipment like that. Instead of us having to put specs together for a full fire truck and bid it out, we can just go to a purchasing cooperative or the state or whatever and find one that already has been competitively solicited. So it makes our life a lot easier. For you all mostly, we did change the ordinance to say that you all can make capital purchases. We're lodging tax can fund capital purchases, which is a really good thing. But I would imagine that most of what you'll be procuring is more on the service side. So marketing and advertising vendors, technology vendors, that type of thing. So we'll be focusing more on those qualification-based solicitations for what you're looking at. Certainly appropriate for you all as boards and commission members to serve on RFP evaluation committees and be part of the decision-making process. And we can go from there. But
are we able to earmark monies to be like a match for granting? Because I know a lot of grants can be matched. Mm-hmm. So we'd be like, okay, let's do $60,000. Let's go after this grant that was $120,000.
Yeah.
We have to do a half match or something.
Absolutely.
Because that's the best way to double our money without having to ask our taxpayers.
Sure. You can definitely put that into a line item and during the budget process. So for 2024, you might want to say we want to set aside $60,000 just in a fund that we have for potential grant purchase. So you absolutely can do that. Any other budget questions?
I was curious about verification for sole source providers. I'm thinking specifically about Jason's current proposal, where we really only we're working with specific vendors, and that's all there is, right? Like you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram.
Yeah.
So what consists of verification?
So for sole source, that would be a situation where if we were paying Instagram or Facebook, they would be the vendor. But if we're paying a third party to do the work for us, you would have to demonstrate that that's absolutely the only person who can do the work in the entire country. And so if there's even a thought that there's somebody else who can do the work work, then we need to at least strive to get those quotes. Where we see sole sources is if we have a proprietary piece of equipment. So, for example, the centrifuge that we have for our wastewater treatment facility, the service on that is only one company does that because it's their equipment. So they would send us a letter, and it's the onus is on them to be honest with us and say, we are the only person who can provide this service to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, in this case, like, Jason's doing the work, but he's not taking payment. So, like, he is the vendor, kind of,
Sure.
but he's not getting paid, and so we are paying directly to the advertising platform.
Right. So that
So,
would be probably sole
that's-
source. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we just kind of hand wave that along.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we could go to Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
Well, and, like, Twitter's probably not going to send us.
A letter.
Not going on Twitter, but
Yeah.
you know, platform of choice is not going to send us a letter.
No, absolutely. And when we get to that point, though, we do want to have some kind of backup for the audit and the records that we would provide when we're asking for the purchase order
Yeah.
to justify this is why
Can we ask like other cities how they do it? Because I'm sure we're not going to do this.
we can. I mean, our procurement laws are very similar to every other city that I've ever worked for, and they match the states. So I would imagine they're doing similar things. Now, the difference is their procurement thresholds might not be to the level that ours are, where we're even required to do these quotes. But I'm not sure we can.
So
certainly
if
ask.
you are running a specific ad and Facebook tells you it's gonna cost $5,000, we need a quote. We need that in writing. And I don't know, our credit cards, I don't know that we can handle that with $20,000 card.
They all just have a daily rate. They're not.
Yeah,
It's a
gonna
daily
give you
bid, yeah.
a program.
Okay, so that's fine.
You don't pay it all up front. It's as it.
It'd be like
Okay.
$50 a day that will go
Mhm.
subtract it out. And
Okay.
it says Facebook, it has their,
Yeah.
or Meta.
Yeah, this seems like pretty simple to figure out. So I'm not too worried about it. I think.
Yeah, I was just curious if we
It's a good
had
question.
to like just write something up that says, yeah, this is the only option or whatever. Yeah, that clears everything.
Again, I need to be made aware, so don't make that agreement until you let me know. Okay, so if it's an email or something that says Facebook's gonna do it for $20 a day, I need that as backup to attach to the purchase order.
And the nice thing about those platforms is once you have everything configured in terms of your targeting, it tells you that exact estimated cost. So we
Yeah.
can just recap that and send it over.
I think Main Street Group uses that at Christmas time, they put out blasts. So I've seen it before, I just make sure you don't do it until I know about it. Because the bottom of that form says, rule of thumb, you have a purchase order in hand before you pledge any of the city dollars.
Cheryl hates surprises, so I never sneak up on her. Okay, and I do have, I'm one of the few who has a purchasing card for the city, so I can help out if we want to do some credit card
No,
payments.
I
Oh,
have
never
a
mind.
card, if you come through me,
Go to
it's
Cheryl.
at least, I'm the one who generates purchase order anyway,
Okay.
so it's just easier if
For
it
you to
goes
go
through
to-
my
okay.
office.
Okay.
So,
So yeah, so we can work through Cheryl on that. Any other, since we have just a few minutes on this conversation, I did want to, and I think it's germane to the budget discussion, talk about a couple of ideas that I have for spending down the fund balance, and I just wanted to kind of get your feedback on these ideas. The biggest one that I wanted to present to you is upgrades to the space we create. I really think that we could use some really nice contemporary audiovisual equipment here, some more tables, some more chairs.
Chairs.
Yeah, so that way when we do use this as an event center, we have the facilities available to do that. I asked JC from Main Street Live to come over and just do kind of an assessment of what the AV needs might be, so we can start at least looking at what pricing would look like. But I just want to throw that all out to you. I think that this is a tremendous opportunity for small conferences, for small conventions to come through, and I would love to see this put in good use. Hey, Allie. So that's one, and then honestly, I think that's all we're really eyeing right now as far as spending things down, but certainly open to your ideas, Parks and Rec board ideas, if there's anything else that's pressing right now that we want to start targeting and looking at dipping into those reserves, now would be a good time. I know later we're going to have some conversations about marketing and advertising, so that would certainly be a good use of those funds as well.
I really wanna have some matching for some grants to sign up for the walk.
Okay.
When you spend all that money getting people to make a plan, it's good to go.
Yeah.
I think it could be huge from
We need detail when we do the budget, when we put it together, so if it's a DOLA grant, I need to know it's a 50-50, so that way we budget $100,000 in revenue, and then $50,000 is the match, so I need the breakdowns. If it's 80-20, because we have to recognize the revenue side as well.
I think having a small stage that we could use, because we're already talking about putting on some of our own events as soon as next year.
Yeah.
We could start working on that, having it built.
Okay.
Funny enough, I was actually talking to JC about that as well.
Yep.
And he has someone, I think he said he offered to do it for free, but I don't know
Okay.
if that's true or not, but.
So like, something owned by the city that could be erected in different places.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly,
on
so we're able to put on our own events without.
Yeah.
Because I think, one of the challenges of Blues Fest is I think it was like $50,000 to rent a stage for a weekend, and if we just own our own,
Yeah.
they pay that every year. So we could have bought one over
Okay.
many times.
I wonder if some of that could tie into the AV or just for here too, because if it's mobile, it can be set up wherever.
Yeah, exactly, it could be used for lots of stuff, and then the city, if it's like a tourism grant, maybe they pay a small fee to use it, or just, it's just given to them, but having a stage for our events.
I think it would be helpful to have something that people could just use as long as it's approved city-wise.
I was actually wondering about this space, like, is this public all the time? Can you just come
Yes.
hang out in here?
Yeah, I mean, we keep it open when there's not an event going on, but there's like, we're having a Smithsonian exhibit that's coming in the fall, and so it'll be open for that for people just to casually walk in.
I know I saw a lot of children's tours come in the Good Night Movement.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice.
So if we host something here, what do we do about staff?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So what we would, so the staff to support the event and make sure we have.
Set up, take down, I mean,
Yep.
I know you have Margie in the building, but I don't think Margie can do everything by herself.
No, it's true.
She does so far, but
It's true. So I think part of the reorg for Parks and Rec and that type of thing, one thing I would really like to see is some semblance of our Parks and Rec department be housed here. And then we would have crews that can help with setting up events and that type of thing. That would certainly fall under their purview. But I'll give you an example. I was at the Colorado Brownsville Association conference up in Sheridan in Denver, which is a stuffy old conference center. So no frills. And we did a presentation on how great Trinidad is in our historic architecture and all the great ways that we're using our EPA funding. And people were, very impressed, and several of them said, "Wow, I can come down to Trinidad and see all that you're doing." And I thought, well, how cool would it be? There's 167 people at this conference. We could have just hosted it in Trinidad, and you could have seen it firsthand. And so I think the more we can do that, we're capturing an audience to Trinidad that otherwise wouldn't come here, but maybe will fall in love with it and want to bring their friends and family back. So we'll certainly have plenty of time to have conversations with you all about that. But what I will do is just start putting some preliminary ideas and quotes together for upgrades to this building, and then we can present that to you at a meeting, hopefully in August, and then move forward on doing some good things here.
Yeah, it'd be great to utilize this space.
I would love to see bands here. In fact, Allison and I have been talking about Main Street wants to do a music festival in October. And we talked about, well, why not just open up space to create as well, and then you have bands across the street from each other and make it more festival.
it's a new word.
Oktoberfest.
October
Yes,
festival.
yeah,
Exactly.
Good for Chara.
Exactly. So,
So I wanted to mention, boards need to work with their liaisons regarding requests such as a stage, because I think Blues Fest had asked for it before, but we don't have anywhere to store it. So where do we store a stage? Maybe now we can store it here, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the
Yes.
stuff that staff has to consider and
maintenance.
talk with the Public Works Department, that type of thing, because we have no storage.
Is that my understanding? Didn't the place where the trolleys currently being stored get sold, correct? Or maybe
I
not?
don't know.
Okay, I thought the trolley didn't have storage before. We paid for trolley storage.
We
Huh.
do.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know. Did it?
I'm asking.
No, yeah,
Okay,
So we're still paying, so.
Because we're still paying for trolley storage, so.
yeah,
When I saw of the line item, it said 116%, did you reach to the storage?
If you look at, if you look at the encumbrance though, most of that is the purchase order.
Oh, is it?
It's, so we encumber those funds at the beginning of the year, so it's locking up the funds. Yeah.
Well, can I just jump in on that? Do you know how big this is,
What's that?
the stage?
No, I don't. They were
Oh,
just,
this,
they just brought it up.
This idea is-
Just come back to me because we've been doing all kinds of clearing in the theater. And I've got a huge basement and I've got upstairs where I we store large flasks. I'd be happy to help you. If you give me dimensions and come back to me.
This is our first like.
This is our first
time
time.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say that this
Yeah,
is a good
thank you.
time for me to say, if you're needing it, maybe we can be of service to you. You know, honestly, that's just good to get on the ground floor, guys, you know, so you know where you might have a place to store it.
So any other questions?
So I know you said that this packet is paid from the Canada,
Well,
from the
part of
part of our salary is.
Okay, so I'm just guessing wondering is who else are we employing in the Welcome Center? Because it's kind of a big expense.
We have another full-time assistant. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And so, I mean, as far as the budget numbers you're seeing now, these are policy decisions that the previous tourism board made in the city council. So certainly it's your purview to advise a different structure if you want.
You just think for,
What's that,
just for thinking about
2024?
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Well,
anything
We
that's,
have 10% budget for staff in the new lodging.
right, so the lodging,
Ordinance.
20%.
Oh, 20%.
Well, it's 20% is just Welcome Center and staff. And to do staff and the Welcome Center, it's gonna be really tight. It's gonna be really
Well, and if we are, I mean, we've previously brought up, potential for an additional position. So that'd be another
tight.
staff expense, yeah.
There's a couple of things. So the ordinance is not specific to the Welcome Center. It says that it can fund staff germane to lodging tax advisory board functions or lodging tax functions, including the creation of a convention and visitors bureau. So it's flexible enough for the future. So whatever we want to do going forward. The other thing is we're in discussions. What happened, 4 or 5 years ago, the state stopped funding our Welcome Center, which is why lodging tax kind of took some of the hit on that policy decision back then. Marty and I have been working really hard with CCI right now to see if we can get that funding back, and I think we're going to. And we're hoping for about $80,000 annually, which would also offset these expenses. And really, it is the state's Welcome Center, so they should be funding a major portion of it.
Yes.
That's very true. Because, you know, it seems to me that they probably started the travel shop as a way to try to offset expenses, but it's not.
No.
It was just so that we just provide
Yeah,
tourist attraction merchandise. It wasn't meant to garner any funding. It does make, last year it made $3,000, yay. So,
but yeah, it's not a heavy revenue source,
wasn't.
it's more of a service that we wanted to provide.
So it made 3,000, but, okay, but it seems like there's still a lot of expenses with it.
if you look at the revenues and you look at the expenses,
Yep.
you can see the offset of 3,000. Right now, June revenues aren't posted, so it looks like we haven't collected what we have, but we are over. I'm sure once I post June revenues,
Yep.
we'll be over collected.
Yeah. And those are the things we absolutely look for. If we saw a program or a service like that that was operating in the red, we would absolutely recommend pulling that because that's especially something like that, that's not something that the taxpayer should be subsidizing. So we would never want to get into that position. Okay, any other questions? So these are good questions. And, certainly feel free to look through the reports we've given you and any questions that come up. You can email me or Cheryl, happy to answer them.
Is the trolley being used now?
It is. I think we have a driver now.
I think so.
And so, for example, OEDIT's coming for a site tour on Thursday, and I've requested to use the trolley for that, which I think would be a really good hit for them. And they're one of our larger funders, so we want to wow them. But yes, it is being used, and I'm not sure to what extent, but let's get you guys a report on trolley usage.
I haven't seen it around yet.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I saw it one day, so it was just kind of rolling around empty. So
Is that me?
We need to get on and sing.
Exactly.
Clap, goes the trolley.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Cheryl, appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Have fun.
Appreciate it.
So should we be actively thinking of some stuff to spend down this money on as an investment?
Yeah, I think so.
Does a service count towards this too, or is this more like a product, or either?
No, so again, we have about $335,000 that we would like to spend in the near-ish future. And the only caveat to that is we would never want to commit for anything that's a recurring expense. So you wouldn't want to put it towards a multi-year contract, for example.
Gotcha, okay.
But if it would just be like a one-time service agreement to come do an assessment of something, perhaps, that would be good. Or certainly anything tangible, so maybe upgrades here would be a one-time expense. Sure. Yeah, exactly. That would be the only caveat. Otherwise, it can fall into whatever you all think is appropriate for its use.
Main Street Board, they had money that they were giving to some businesses to refinish the front of their buildings, but the way they divided it up, it was such a small amount of money.
Yeah.
Right?
That was a previous Main Street board, and we were trying to figure out exactly what the thought process was there.
Yeah.
Still, there is a small amount of money that's for the facade program that basically got cut because there wasn't good advertisement around applying for it, so nobody applied for it, so it's nothing, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But we are looking into that. Yeah.
Just the amount of money. I thought they said they wanted to divide it up, and said, no, you can usually do
No,
that.
They only have like, no, it's not impossible, but it is possible. Maybe old, but not, we have a whole new board there too.
We also just have a fairly small budget.
Yeah, about 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got really all the treasure. The rest of the boards.
And everybody thinks that the quality of life fund is gonna go to them. Like, you talk to everybody, they're like, oh, we're gonna get the board, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Because even if it's, 500,000, it's still only 150,000, which is not, goes really fast.
It does.
Goes really fast.
Yeah, so I that's probably, I do like your idea of matching funds for Riverwalk grants. So
Yeah.
some of the spend down maybe we could get to Parks and Rec or overlapping things. I'm thinking of specifically trail to town connections. So anything that leads in and out of the downtown area or to the other hotels up off exit 11 there.
Yeah.
Signage.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, signage and wayfinding. So, yeah, it could be.
There's a
something
lot.
that overlaps there, yeah.
There's a lot of grants that we can earmark that money and double our money.
And one of the good things about the new ordinances for most of those grants, especially when you get into GoCo, Trust for Public Lands, that type of thing, one of the huge things they're looking for is, do you have some funding source to maintain whatever it is that we're helping you accomplish? And we really didn't have that before this change. So I think we've already gotten some feedback from Trust for Public Lands and GoCo actually, that they're very appreciative of the new structure we have for lodging tax, which in turn should make us far more eligible for future grant applications.
The kiosk program, was that put into place? I don't even know what the kiosks are.
The ones over there and the other ones over there.
What do you guys require from upkeep or maintenance?
There's really not much. The general fund picks up the electricity costs, which are minimal anyway. So it would just be, if there was something that got damaged, we would have to find some money to replace that, but we're not anticipating that. The only other upkeep is just maintaining what's on there, and that would be, a human resource issue. Cool. All right.
Okay, well, it is 10:03, we want to we want to start discussing the next topic here? Or do we have more questions?
I have a motion to move on.
Okay.
All right.
Second.
Sweet.
All right, discussion of mission statement, board goals and logo.
I have something for this.
Let's do it.
So I started on the Colorado Tourism Office website taking their learning labs. The very first one is communication and learning how to be a resource for tourism. And there was some good information there on mission statements.
Cool.
And I thought that was awesome. So I kind of wrote up a little mission statement to kind of maybe give us a starting point, just using their resources that they have. And there are numerous resources. I recommend all of you guys going and doing those courses. This is what I have. Our mission is to improve the quality of life of our residents through tourism. We are responsible for promoting our community as a desirable destination in a sustainable, environmentally responsible, and transparent way. Our goal is to lessen the tax burden on our residents and to create social and economic opportunities for residents and local businesses.
That's good.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Love it.
Did you write that?
I think
That's awesome.
well, I mean, I
Yes,
used
you had some training, but.
yeah, well, that and, you know, if they kind of have like
Yeah,
a sample
template,
mission
yeah.
statement,
Yeah.
and it's a very similar to this one. I just kind of tweaked it a little bit,
Yes.
to where it wasn't such a paragraph, and I mean, it still is a paragraph, but I got the important bits.
Do you want to read it one more time?
Yeah.
Our mission is to improve the quality of life of our residents through tourism. We are responsible for promoting our community as a desirable destination in a sustainable, environmentally responsible, and transparent way. Our goal is to lessen the tax burden on our residents and to create social and economic opportunities for residents and local businesses.
Great.
I think it's good.
Okay.
One of the great things that was in there too is, I think it's gonna be handy for the campaign to get this tax approved, is, they really stress the fact that increasing a lodging tax does lessen the tax burden on the residents. Because then that's more money coming in from outsiders that our residents don't have to put towards so much, extra stuff. And maybe in the future, if we gain enough lodging tax, we can reduce some of the local taxes that the residents pay. You know, this website is done by OEA. So I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, cool.
There's also, they have craft mentor guidance available. So this would be a representative from the Colorado Tourism Office that would come in and maybe do some mentoring, coaching, help us out with whatever we need. If we have questions about the state. Also, it's good if we want to look at that website, gives us a good idea of how we align with the state guidelines, which will open us up to more grants that they have specifically for places that are aligning with them.
That's great.
So there is Governor's Tourism Conference in September in Fort Collins. I did apply for a scholarship for that.
Good.
That will, the deadline is today.
Oh, shit.
Probably end of day today. It does take a little bit of work, but we have discussed this. We've talked about it at least once.
Today's the deadline for applying for a
So I'm applying for the
scholarship.
scholarship. The scholarship only, if we wanted to actually go up in registration like $200, and then your hotel cost. So this scholarship will cover the registration and reimburse me up to like $400 in hotel and travel. Yeah, the mileage and the travel. So I did apply, the deadline was today. We'll hear back about the middle of August, once they make their decision, and I should know if I'll go. But I'll get the scholarship, I'm not gonna go to the conference.
Well, and it is something that the city can fund as well, so.
So
$300.
it's only at,
I'm 30, I have 4 kids.
Well, yeah. For 2 days or the.
It's the 27th, 28th, 29th.
training travel mileage currently at 1.34% used.
Yeah,
a
so
year.
we have a
So we
budget.
could easily send somebody.
Yeah.
Can you just read the last sentence of your statement one more time for me? I'm skimming it, I know it's good. From our goal is to lessen.
The tax burden on our residents and to create social and economic opportunities for residents and local businesses.
I'm wondering if that last part is more about a vision statement. Are we combining both a vision statement and a mission statement?
I often like combining those things. Usually the mission is a little bit, so oftentimes the mission is a little bit shorter and the vision will blow it out and be several more sentences. But I feel like no one ever reads or pays attention to a vision statement. It's if you can get it all into one thing, I think that's totally fine.
And actually, I want to thank you so much for bringing up OEdit. I've also been on the OEdit site, and I really want this board to start partnering with OEdit, which is why I did make the executive decision to bump Anissa to one of our actual meetings and actually make our working lunch be an OEdit webinar. Because I believe that us actually getting into this board actually doing what it's getting into what it's supposed to be doing and partnering with the state rather than just kind of willy-nilly it, I think will improve Trinidad.
I think going to those learning labs will bring a good sense of professionalism and give us a better idea of what a professional tourism board actually looks like and does.
Yes.
And also,
We got a grant for this thing called Project Blueprint.
Correct.
Keely's going to be talking about that.
Yes.
And I also put that on our thing too, because having Project Blueprint has been wanting to work with Trinidad so badly and just really needed someone to actually do the work and submit for it. I think that we get a tremendous partner for us. I think that when we get some of that information in, because we do have that 11:30 to 12, we can talk about that and really close and culminate with our understanding of how we're going to move forward with our goal of doing this.
it's
What should I bring to her about it?
It is perfect.
because they have a lot of eyes on Trinidad as well. I mean, with the state park in particular. So definitely good ideas there.
Well, and I think I had mentioned when I was at the Colorado Municipal League Conference, there was a presentation by the tourism director there about Colorado's Do Colorado Right campaign. And I think it's going to be crafted similar to what New Mexico did with their New Mexico True, where it's hosted out of the state tourism office. But then if local entities or private partners apply and support that campaign, then I think, as Ashley saw, we're eligible for lots of funding. I don't know that I love Do Trinidad Right. That's more your decision, but I agree. To whatever extent we can align with what the state's doing, I think that's going to be better.
I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean, about Do Trinidad Right? So would that have to be our tagline?
I don't know.
Would it just be, I think, isn't the campaign about taking what you bring in,
Yeah.
kind of,
It is. States adopting Do Colorado Right is their tagline and their statement. I haven't seen anything that would mandate that for partnerships, but there is potential. And again, looking at New Mexico, if they were to give grants, city grants money to promote the city, you'll see billboards that say grants is New Mexico True to align with their campaign. So I don't know if Colorado is looking at doing that, but it's something that we need to keep an eye on.
Cool. Well, we're not voting in this section, but I think it would be wonderful. I love the mission statement. I think we should vote on it next week.
Good, we'll put it on the agenda.
Next agenda.
Yeah, good job.
Good job. Well, that was easy. So then I think we got mission statements. I think we should go for goals. I think that's a larger conversation.
And if you don't mind me interrupting real quick. Allison mentioned to me that she brought some numbers for that music fest that she's, so if you guys don't mind pausing, I just kind of wanted Allison maybe to talk about what you're looking at and funding.
We had a leak in the theater, gas leaks this morning. So I was a little late and we turned all the gas off because all the kids are inhaling gas, singing Doe a Deer. So it's and singing.
But yeah,
Anyway,
you want to
thank
explain
you, I
that?
can do this in 5 minutes or less. I wanted to come to you all because Trinidad Blues Fest is a big deal in Trinidad and it was canceled. And at Main Street Live, we have a huge venue for concerts, and we've been doing them, you know, and we're officially going to announce a concert series. But what came up between me and JC, and also me just saying we can't let Trinidad go, doing it in a smaller sense and sharing it with the Commons. So October 6th, we would start with a headliner. We have 3 bands at Main Street Live on Saturday, 2 dance bands here, so people could just come over and dance. Headliner Saturday night, 3 SoCo bands here on Sunday, so we call it SoCo Sunday, and we wrap it, and you have 2 bands here on Sunday for dancing, you know, so people can go back and forth. So I put this all together, but as you all know, I will leave them here if you want to go through it. But the bottom line is, we would keep the Trinidadio, we would call it something like Drop City Music Fest, or, you know, something silly and creative. We wanted, anyway, I think that kind of works, we can brainstorm that. Right now, Randy Holker plays for Miguel Espinosa and is a booker, Curtis is a booker, JC is a booker, Billy D is a booker, and we took $1,500 as a midpoint per band, right? So for bands, approximately it's like 16,000, 20,000 to 20,000. Tech for both days, for 3 days, is about $1,000. Manager percentage, this is something you run into, you have to pay the managers. However, I can finagle that. I could sleep with them, but not comment, so. But we were looking at maybe $2,000 there. I don't know if the Commons has the sound system. We have a big sound system and we are going for a private grant to enhance that, so we would just give that. Tickets were free in the past always. So, you know, you just came to the festival and it was subsidized by the city and tourism board, or what that name was then. What we were toying with is maybe charging a small fee and both venues keeping concessions and bar and getting sponsorships and having lodging, I don't know what you're called, lodging tax board. Okay, give it the, and having you put some money towards that. We wouldn't do that, we would give the theater and we would give the lights and all of that. Originally I thought we could charge $100 and give, you know, wristbands, but the Trinidad Blues Fest never charged. So it has to come back to the city, to the tax, to other sponsors, maybe the Hilton, you know, and I was thinking too, for putting up bands, etc. We could go to the Hilton and maybe get sponsorships there. So I wanted to throw that out there and see if we could do it together. And the Chamber of Commerce, it was proposed to me by one of the booking agents who is married to one of the people that support the Chamber, that they definitely could sell liquor here and Chamber could help with marketing costs. So anyway, that's what that is about. And I'll leave that.
Quick question about the payments. Because when we were looking at bands for the road again for Winterfest, we had a budget of like $5,000 per band, and apparently that's gone up tremendously over the past year to year and a half. So do you know $1,500 is about right?
Yeah, but what I did was about $1,800 to $2,000, especially in Colorado, if we're offering that they stay somewhere and we can give them a per diem or a place to eat. So big headliners might be $5,000 to $6,000, and I can look into it and have the bookers look into it. We're a destination location, so you know, we don't have to have huge bands. I'd love to have headliners as somebody we know, and Sunday would only be bands that we all know, right? We're not going to pile the same bands on, do you know? And there's some younger bands that are making their rounds. from LA to Denver, so I thought I would just throw it out there and see if we could offer, maybe they could be on their route to another place. And I don't mean transitioning from the physical. I mean, so, anyway, Yeah.
Since Blues Fest did always have free ticketing, what if you have charged a wristband for VIP and they get a certain number of drink tickets? Or, or they have some sort of VIP lounge, or they have some sort of perk after party, or some sort of after party. Yeah.
or you can certainly do that here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that way you
Seating or
could
something.
start having some revenue in
Yeah.
from the VIP ticket. And then for probably, there's free admittance, they only get to the this and this, but VIP.
Yeah, VIP is great, you get front seating, I mean, in our theater, you could get a good seating, that's a great idea, and you could give them an allotment for drinks.
Correct.
And maybe, you know what else we could do, because we can manage that, not just food, we could meet the artist.
Yeah.
This was a big thing in LA and New York, and people loved it. That's a great idea, and I can put that, so I wanted to open the conversation here, because I know it's coming up fast, but I didn't want to drop it. We have this weekend, we're pretty well booked. And I think we take it into November, we're gonna run into snow. Do you know? So anyway, I'd love you to look, I'll leave this, and I also wanted to talk to you, and I will fill out an application. We are doing an intergenerational program, 16 up and 14 to 19. We were granted $26.50 for that. It is a program out of New York City, TheaterWorks, and bringing the elderly here and the young. They apply, they're put together, there are only 12 spots, and at the end of 12 meetings, we do a public reading of local actors about what the stories they came up with. We're looking for another $1,400 to complete what we need for that, so it's a free program. So I'll leave it all for you guys, all right? And these lovely copies. And what would you need from me, or can you get back to me about what more you need? I can't take it on fully, that's why I need to collaborate.
If you could provide us, Allison, some firm numbers as to what you're requesting, we can put it on our next agenda and have a robust discussion at that point, but I think this is a good kickoff for your idea.
All right, so do you want me to just leave this?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can review that.
Yeah,
for this meeting.
Yeah, that's great, because I can print, this is a better copy.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks,
I'm
Alex.
gonna go and what's up. And South Music opens Friday, y'all. Dinner theaters next week, do come.
Oh, sweet.
All right, see you
I'm
later.
excited about Sound of Music.
What?
I'm excited about Sound of Music.
Oh, I thought you said you're sorry about
I'm
stuff.
excited about Sound of Music. I love Sound of Music.
The orchestra tracks are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really got great tracks. Have a good day, y'all.
I do like, Music Fest, I think is key. Like that has to be part of the calendar every year.
And how does this differ from people applying for the tourism grant? Are we going to continue that program, or is this perhaps become one of the city's events, one of the tourism?
Yes, and that's something certainly to discuss. I think in this context, the city would want to be more of a partner in this music festival, and maybe even some semblance to sponsor, since we're using our facility and it's not necessarily being rented out. But certainly, I think on the next agenda, it's something that we should have a pretty robust discussion about and see what you guys think.
Cool. Yeah, trying to go down, super down the rabbit hole right now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, honestly, if we want to continue, like, to your point, next year, 2024, the grant, we can.
Yeah.
We don't have to.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we can just, choose to fund what we want to fund and not choose to fund what we want to fund. So, I mean, I think some of the granting stuff has created some animosity in the community, I'll be honest. It's like, well, why did this person get one and I didn't? Why did this person get this much and I only got this much? And I think it was good in some ways, but it had some challenges in some ways.
I agree.
It still could be the case though, because if people are just coming to us with individual proposals, and
Correct.
we turn them down, then they will have,
Same
there's always
size.
gonna be bad feelings. It's like, that's,
Yeah.
it's just gonna come.
And it could be just in the way they present it. It might be a fantastic idea, but they're not presenting it well. It's on us to go, that's a crappy presentation, but we think we can do great stuff.
Well, and just for some context, the some of the events that lodging tax has funded in the past, those event organizers have been told, okay, this is meant, and really all the grants are meant to be startup funding for their event while they get their act together, and then the idea would be they'd eventually be self-sustainable. So it was never meant to be a permanent funding source for those events.
And that's what
Yeah.
some of the things with Arcade,
Yeah.
because they got some startup funds.
Yep.
That wasn't, they weren't, so they were like $60,000 for startup
that's right.
funds? For a few years.
Yeah.
In a row, I think like 3-4 years in a row, they got $60,000 for startup.
Yep.
That's also my concern with her kind of just repeating, well, Blue Fest never charged, so it's like, we're at an inflection point, it's like, we're time to start charging.
Well, if we're
If
gonna
it needs to
change
be.
the name, it's not Blue Fest.
Yeah, exactly, so
That's totally
it needs to be
different.
sustainable, even if you start with $5 for residents or $10 for non-residents
Yeah,
or something, like,
Yeah.
there's ways to kind of slowly build that expectation.
Out of curiosity, for every round of the tourism grants, how many people applied? I mean, how many people were turned down? I mean,
I don't know. I can tell you that the cycle we just did, we approved everything that came through. It's predicated on how much funding there is available, of course. And then in technical terms, the past tourism board, they were taking a little bit different of approach where they would just talk about the applications in a meeting and kind of make decisions collectively. But I think it's really important that there's independent scoring and evaluation on them, and then they get a total cumulative number, and the decisions are entirely based on how well they scored to the panel, not an arbitrary decision.
Yeah, perceived merit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of hurt feelings got, is perceived merit.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great way to mitigate that, hurt feelings, is like, this is the criteria, X, Y, and Z that we're scoring on, so.
And I think the past tourism board had some semblance of a tiered system where if you were a first-time event, you were eligible for a certain amount.
10,000.
Yeah, 10,000. 5,000, but even they were kind of deviating from that rule, and I think that's, to Lee's point, what caused a lot of the animosity. So as long as we're sticking with what we're advertising and being very equitable, that's always going to win.
Yeah, or it would be kind of like Trinidad Community Fund where it's like 2,000,
Yep.
basically, you
Yep.
know? But here's the thing, is do we need to continue to pay people to advertise to do events if we're actually doing a good job advertising events in town?
Exactly.
No, we don't really need to.
Yeah.
You know, if events maybe it's less of, we're gonna give you a certain amount of money for advertising and more of a, apply to have us advertise for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that puts us
Yeah.
with skin in the game. I love that.
Yeah.
Because we say we've got so much experience with social media, we've got all that kind of stuff here.
Yeah.
We ought to rely on our own talents because that's kind of what distinguishes us from the past board. We take on, and like I said, we've got a crappy presentation that you go, I think that would be a cool thing. And we all can contribute to it to make it really awesome.
I mean,
Like that.
just kind of going off of some of the information that we know, our top 5 tourism destinations. We're at History Museum, which is in complete shambles.
Walmart.
Well, number 2 is the lake, number 2 is the lake, number 3 is Walmart, number 4 is the West Spanish Peak Trailhead, so that's people doing athletic things.
Yeah.
And then number 5 is Western Colorado, which means that they come into town and then they go west. So I think if we could, I would love some of our goals to actually have, of our 5 things actually be in town and be some of our actual attractions. That's what I would,
Okay.
you know, like, and how can we just, our number 1 tourism attraction is completely in shambles. I mean, how do we partner with them to make it better? So,
That tourism attraction has a lot of challenges.
agreed.
Not just within the 4 walls of the building, but with many members of the community. Change in that facility is hard because a lot of people feel like they have ignorance.
Yes.
It causes some history museum.
Are we just talking about Trinidad as a whole?
No,
No,
but yeah, no, but it is difficult in that space because that particular space, the Trinidad History Museum, is very valuable and important to many members of the community. They, you know, and as we all know, Trinidad can sometimes be slow to change. And it is difficult to make changes in that space.
Yeah.
Without significant pushback from certain members.
Then we could always
So that
choose to put that as a lower priority on the goals list, and maybe do something that's a little easier to promote, higher on the goals list.
my thought on this is more of if we are going to do something with that, then we need to be prepared to deal with.
I understand.
And
Well,
I
that's
would
good.
love to. That is a very valuable asset, and it is one of the few things in town that children do have to do. Although it's not a whole lot in there, I'd like to see like that children's museum on the street that they're telling me it's not even anything with it. I would love to see that revitalized or something like that.
I can get this whiteboard going. We're talking about goals.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think that's great input. And maybe that's one of the things that we tackle in year 2 or 3, is we can't do all of that at once. And maybe we pick some of the easier things
It'll just.
and prioritize them first, so that we start getting some wins, and we start actually making some progress. So,
I would love to know that.
yeah, I mean, the history museum is the reason I'm in
Oh.
Trinidad, so it does hold a special place in my heart, but it's rough right now.
How about just erase the stuff that's on this side?
Oh, we got the
Put it on the other side.
It rolls,
Yes,
yes, it
that's
rolls.
I
It
think
rolls
just-
right around.
Yeah.
You wanna check it out?
Yeah.
I think just the general goal of bringing tourism to downtown.
What would be our, I know that we do have, we are down 12%, I suspect we'll be down even more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just by what business owners and other people are saying statistically about this in July. So,
You're talking broad goals right now, so.
I think we're just talking goals. I know, like, so my goals would be that our top 5 places are actually the places that this place, that the tourism board chooses to promote, instead of them being 2 locations that are outside of city limits.
Yeah, so promoting center of Trinidad.
Okay, well, what if, for instance, people come with ideas for events, and they say, well, we want to do it here, you go, well, we really want to promote Trinidad Lake, and you're going to do that during the summer, so you thought about considering that, and combining that, or no? Would that still be in our purview, or are we dependent on, or is it just us going,
I think, I know some city council people, and the mayor specifically does want us to have a broad, regional situation, thought process. And I would like that too, but at the same time, I'm always kind of like, let's handle our 4 walls first. And then once we get our, it's like hopping on the plane. You gotta get, your mask on first, and then you can hop on others. So why don't we start trying to help ourselves, and then we can then help the lake, and help
I think the lake,
State Lake Park.
I think the lake encompasses town. Weston, no way, way too far out. But the lake, I mean, it's only a few miles.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what it's called. But to me, like, Fishers, the lake, that would be like a radius that I would consider part of Trinidad. Because people also stay there. And they
yes.
come into town and buy dinner or whatever else. So, I don't know if we get lucky
No,
to
we're
actually
trying to
lake
work
We don't.
or not. But it does bring business into town. Whereas Weston, I mean, they might fill up a tank of gas every month.
I think that's what's happening, is they're going to the, filling up gas and then probably making them.
what are you trying to do?
I think it's just where the cell phone ends, just where the cell phone pings capturing.
Yeah,
So
so
that they
just-
come to town, and then we've seen that they're going west, and they may be going to Char, they may be going to the Monument, we have no idea, but that's just what the cell phones are pinging us, is that into town, out of town, rather than staying in town. And then I think it's important to see that it is West Main Street Trailhead, which means that people are coming specifically for physical activity as well. So maybe try to capture some of those people to be in town as well.
Fishers will be huge for that. The Peak Trail will take a lot of those people. It's another summit,
Exactly.
and it's very accessible, so that'll be huge for that.
But we don't
Okay,
have
so-
a really good timeline when that bad boy's opening. They're kind of somewhere underneath there.
It'll be this year,
You think so?
I do.
Okay. Because every
They're
time I
saying
talk to
that,
people, they're like, maybe next year.
I think so. They're starting like next week. Crews will be back up there, so.
I think regardless of whether Fisher Speed, anyway.
Yeah,
like, even though it's not totally
Yeah.
full, these things take time. It's not like you just turn on a switch
No.
and fix it, so you can start getting the word more out before it's even as open as we would like.
I'm just gonna throw the link on there as well.
Reference something you said earlier, make one of the goals to go ahead and get the traffic grant in Riverwalk.
I think
Because I feel like if we had the Riverwalk where we wanted it, it would be a major
it would be a major choice.
tourist attraction. And that might be worth some time spent.
I agree. And also the fact that they have the amphitheater as part of it, that would lend us to a music festival. If you look at the other small mountain communities, a music festival, whatever they choose it to be, and they do a good job. It tends to do a good job for the community.
To tag on to that, I mean, I think festivals and events is, that's a general goal, so we can get more concrete on that, but recurring established city administrators festival. I don't know if we want to have any like, secondary event type thing there.
Like a First Friday type thing, or like a
And the festivals.
Like a
it's
farmer's
a whole
market.
process.
it's not a huge,
Just a little idea,
Tourist
looking at
attraction.
your opinions on it.
it is something.
So where I'm from, every year they did this big expo thing in the civic center called Mistletoe and Moss. And it would be just an area, people come in, set up in their booths, and it would be Christmas decorations or homemade gifts or just general things like that. Christmas,
Like a European Christmas market. which is
Yeah.
awesome.
I was thinking we do this Christmas light parade every year, and it's a good event. Can we make it bigger?
Just,
That's
just leave after the parade.
Well,
So women of Los Angeles County were talking about doing like a Christmas market.
Sebastian Gym is right there, the parade goes right in front of it, or it starts right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that I'm gonna speak a little bit to your point earlier, Ashley, about, with how some things people feel in the community very attached to, and it's kind of like their thing, and you don't necessarily want to step on toes. Maybe it would be easier for us to, instead of tagging on to events, just in the easy of our first couple of years, create some of our own events, so that there are no, this has always been a thing kind of event. Well, because the parade actually has their own, the parade has their own board.
Right.
And that's all they do is the Christmas parade. The Prayer Lights has their own board. And, instead of,
Maybe we approach their board and say, hey, have you guys ever thought about more of a festival kind of situation? And then they're inclusive and maybe they have ideas and they thought of something and maybe they're sitting on stuff and didn't think how they could do it or just, offer cooperation. But yeah, we can definitely, I'm just thinking winter is our slowest time. That also festival is coming, which I'm happy about, but still it's a little far from us.
So that would be a good goal, would be increase tourism traffic and revenues over the winter. So how that happens is like that. But if we're talking just like high level goals, it's boost winter somehow.
Yeah, we need people here.
yeah, because January and February, I mean, most people just close because it's financially unsustainable for them to be open.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought I would say this for my business, we're considering closing because it's financially not worth it.
We're gonna go right back to Mexico.
With the Winterfest, one of our proposals is we want Cultura to open up during the winter. And we're having a lot of resistance there because people are gonna go in and turn on their fryers and
Well, even staffing, I mean, they probably have seasonal folks come in for that type of stuff. There's a lot of logistical issues. We don't face that quite as much in Trinidad.
I think there's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation in Trinidad, especially when it comes to things being open in businesses. It's like, they're not open because there's no tourists here. So, but to get tourists here, you have to have open stuff.
Right.
So it is a pinch of a chicken and an egg problem.
are they, I wondered about that. Are they not open, do they not keep regular hours because a lot of them just own their businesses, own the land that's on, and they say, well, I'm gonna open up because I wanna go on vacation this summer, so I need to make some extra money? Or is it that they just don't have enough?
I know for me and my business, which is just anecdotal, there is a $27,000 difference between our best summer month and January.
Yeah.
So when you barely make enough money to pay your rent in January versus your summer month, it's hard to pay a person to sit there, or to yourself to just sit there all day twiddling your thumbs, being terrified. So, yeah. So I don't know what it's like for everybody, but that's my anecdotal difference, you know. And then when I speak to other business owners like the Two Scoops and Francesca's and stuff, they have a similar problem, where it's like they have these huge discrepancies between their summer months and winter months.
And then was your question more,
Oh, well, for instance, like restaurants aren't open regularly.
sometimes
And
there's
then the one
arbitrary.
that I always think about is El Rancho.
Yeah,
You know, you gotta make sure that you go when they're open, and I don't know how much of that is, they already own their business, they've had it a long time, there's a lot of people here who've been here a very long time, and they just open up when I want to.
Most people are just not making enough money to stay open. That's why you usually see, like Monday, Tuesday, a lot of restaurants are closed because those are the days of the week people eat out the least. So it's already real tight around here. So I think that's most places, not everywhere, but it's generally just not enough revenue to stay open and even remain profitable.
What if we did some like targeting advertising in the winter time, like the big cities that are used to dealing with snow? So like Denver, our number one tourist, you know, as we saw in the results, a lot of people come here from Denver. They're not afraid to drive in the snow. Albuquerque is another big one. Colorado Springs. We can put something together and advertise it in those big areas where we know people are coming here already, and we can draw them in and go for us.
My campaign was basically just doing that. So people targeted for summer, but it could be the same thing, it's just a different ad.
That was just something to get here.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what are we promoting in the winter? So I'm kind of trying to divide these two things.
It's a great
here.
question.
Oh,
So-
we got more snow, then we can do like snow cones, you know?
So yeah, we got kind of like high level goals and then the how. So that's going to be a lot of targeted digital advertising. Is probably going to be our number one thing there. Are there other things that we want to be promoting? So we haven't even really talked like art yet. So I think art is a big one. Maybe architecture.
Friday's going to be turning into a lot bigger thing.
Cool. So yeah, we got art scene / First Friday.
And art is kind of encompassing also to the bands, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of the general arts, the performing arts, the musical arts, the
Yeah.
arts.
Cool. We mentioned history museum. I think that's kind of part and parcel of just history for the town in general, which kind of dovetails with the architecture too. So I don't honestly know how big of a draw that is.
What is?
Just like history. history
Actually,
there.
it's one of the number one things people, when they go on trips, they look at some of the history. They look at that info, the library. When you were talking about, whatever.
I mean, think about, Savannah or any of those other places. You hop on one of their tourism buses and they have a little tour and they drive you around town and tell you all the historical sites. You can go to Williamsburg and do the same thing. I think a lot of Trinidad's history has been pushed under the rug because a lot of people are like, don't talk about the Western stuff, but it could be a huge draw. Because we did have all of those, Doc Holiday and all that, Masterson and Fire, Walt here, Alcohol. We had,
I've always thought this town, the word quirky, is really quirky.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I feel like us not talking about that Wild West history is kind of like Colonial Williamsburg saying you're not going to do colonial anymore. It's like, come on. Yeah. It is what it is. This is part of what happened there. There are groups that, yeah, there are a lot of groups now.
What's that?
How many road nights do we have?
Oh, I don't know.
Road nights. Like, say,
Yeah.
I was to go and Google and say find a Western Authors Conference, and I wanted to reach out to them and say, hey,
Right.
come and have the conference in Trinidad.
Yeah.
How many people can we accommodate? That's like if I'm looking for a.
How many keys?
Keys.
I'm sure we have that data. It's a great question. So I'll see if I can.
I know Keely's been trying to find it really hard.
I think it's hard with all the Airbnbs.
And then if we have, like, say we do host a convention in this building in particular,
Yeah.
where are these people going to stay? Where are they going to park? How are we going to get back and forth? These are all my questions.
No, they're good questions.
I think that would be a good thing for us to produce or get produced as a board. And we're talking about conventions and things, it's basically a packet where you
Yeah.
take it off and it's like, here's Trinidad in a nutshell. Facilities available, equipment, rooms, et cetera, et cetera.
I know there was a big initiative several months ago. I know Chamber was in, Ally was
Yeah.
in it, about trying to have us as more conventions and conference destination. And I thought the city council said, no, not right now, or put a pause on it or something. Did they, or was that?
No, I think they like the idea.
Okay.
And really that's something that's kind of under the purview of this board.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing, because I know there's a destination in Colorado that is a great,
Yeah.
I don't know how much, what all that would take.
Just getting a nice packet, getting it on the website and making sure it's visible with search.
And I'll be honest, like your point of like our own how they're open just when they're open. I think if we did a good job of like talking with our business owners and being like, hey guys, we're gonna bring in 50 to 100 people for this conference.
Totally.
If you would like to be open, please be open.
One of the things that
So I think communication also with our downtown is a big deal.
one of the things that the course recommends on the tourism website. One of the things that the tourism website does recommend is a regular meeting with business owners.
That's great.
As well as the public, but their communication with the public would be like they have the yearly survey, and maybe once or twice a year open it for our public.
Actually, chambers of commerce.
Yeah, and Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the other. But if we gave them a blueprint and say, we want you to do this and this and this and this, I think they can get up and do it. I just don't think they have any direction. They don't have any, but if we told them this is what you perceive your job to be.
Yeah. I think also that there's a lot of people who don't, a lot of businesses don't see the value of joining these associations.
Exactly. But if we
Yeah, that's why
told them do this, this,
I'm not
this,
part of
this.
this. I said $300 wasn't
I'm in
enough.
the chamber to change it.
No, I was
Keep me updated.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Circling back to the convention thing, I do think we can and should be in the mix on that, but how much of that is tourism versus business development? Yeah. So that could be something that's a little bit outside of our board.
Correct.
Yeah, there's definitely a tie-in, but you're right. It is a little bit. But I like for me thinking about if we could get 3 or 4 events here a month during the winter months, the hope would be these people would be walking up and down Main Street, hopefully looking for restaurants, wanting to go into the stores and be part of the community.
Well,
It would, how do we do that, just since, unless you're like a city town in Colorado, things slow down, people don't have as many conventions and that kind of stuff, just because the weather's not as good, so.
Yeah.
The types of things we would be getting though, those do happen in the winter months, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
we do, and I know, I think statistically looking at it, when I went to the Canyon Plains tourism thing, Trinidad does have a tremendous pass-through of people going to Wolf Creek and Monarch and Wreck.
Yeah.
And so maybe we can snag them their first night.
Yeah.
Or their night
Or
before.
that,
I think snagging people along the way is easier than trying to be a winter destination.
that's
There's
what.
a lot of people that come back to work stop here, on the way in, stop there on the way out.
We capitalize on gateways.
Advertise at Dallas,
Exactly.
8 hours, one good day
Our
drive.
plan is to catch people saying, add 1 or 2 days on your ski trip to come here. And we purposely did it after Alamosa and after our French did their ice festivals, because that's the next weekend. We give them another reason.
So I think, kind of circling back here and looking at Joe's board here, I see our major goals is to boost winter traffic, to establish city events that people can count on and don't have to worry about boards collapsing. And it's tough when you count on something happening and it doesn't. And then start promoting I guess we could probably establish events with the art scene, or maybe the art scene goes in with promoting things that are trying to make our top 5 inside Trinidad city limits, our top 5 destinations inside limits. Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
Instead of it, two of the places being outside of city limits. I don't know, I'm just trying to keep us back on.
Yeah, any other, high level goals that we want to get in there? I don't know if I have anything on top of my head,
Maybe we should have goals for year 1, and goals for year 2, and goals for year 3. Instead of trying to just shotgun so many things. Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
we're talking about so many things because there's so much to be done, it's overwhelming.
In general, it goes without saying, but keeping that budget flat is a goal. And potentially increasing though, right? So we want, a major goal is increasing lodging tax revenues. Because then we have more money going back into here and it just keeps growing from there.
Should be a permanent goal.
Absolutely. If anything, that's the number 1 goal.
It is, that's why we're here. Yeah.
But I think it's worth saying all the same.
Yeah.
We don't have to spend it all in 1 year.
Yeah.
Steve, so I know you mentioned about having city events
Yes.
as soon as next year.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to come up with ideas for these things, or start a conversation, or kind of where do you think these initiate from?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the city council has expressed a desire to have at least 3 or 4 city-sponsored events. So I think those suggestions can come from you all. They can come from really anywhere. And I think it would be really good if we work over the fall and winter months to not just throw some things out there like darts, but really put pedal to the metal and plan and organize these events.
Come up with some ideas and get them in motion.
Yeah, so one thing, for example, that's been tossed around by some people to me is, what about the city taking over Santa Fe Trail Days and having that be a city-sponsored event?
Why don't we bring
That
that history from?
That would help with the history, because then,
Yeah.
That could be such a
That could be
such
such
a big event. Yeah, it could be really cool. And it sounds like it used to be a bigger deal too.
it did, because I know a lot of businesses do close during Santa Fe Trail because it's financially detrimental, because it's not a big enough draw.
Right.
So maybe if we could take that over, maybe call it, not instead of it being Santa Fe Trail Days, call it something different, like, call it,
Yeah,
call
but
it something different, because, like Ashley says, there's a lot of toes with a lot of these things. Maybe we just do our own thing and step on their toes and just let the other events do whatever they want to do.
I do think that it would be terrific if Trinidad had an annual event, similar maybe to Trinidad, but something that we're just known for. Like you have Netherlands, who used to have the Frozen Dead Guy Festival, and
Yeah.
people would come from all over the world.
It's great. I've been there.
So yeah, things like that, where if we had a defining thing, it's obviously going to take several years, I would think, for something to catch on. But now would be the time, because we basically have a clean campus, which is kind of a nice thing to have.
Man, that's so tough. You can't force that type of thing
Exactly.
to do though, because
That's your
people can tell when it's phony.
Yeah,
And RFK that is a lot of potential for that to be the one.
exactly.
You look at like Hunta, who they're going all in
Yeah.
on the tarantula
That's exactly.
and it's not really, and it's working for them.
Yeah.
It's working for them, so.
Yep.
Like I said, we just have so many things out there because there's so many things to be done.
Yep.
But we have to pick one or two things to do well and to do right in our first year, 2 years, and then we can then work on some other things. So what are the top things that are working? I mean, for a town with a lot of cannabis shops, we have no 420 Fest. So that's one thing. I know that there might be a lot of pushback from people on that one.
I held a committee, so I formed a committee with the cannabis businesses here in town. I'm trying to. I did have a small response. Last Friday was the first meeting. We're going to meet every third Friday at 2 p.m. here at the Space to Create. So when I did kind of mention maybe trying to put together a 420 festival, and they don't feel that council would be responsive to that. So if we can find a way to kind of feel out whether there would be reception, I probably have a lot more buy-in, but I think they tried this a few years ago and it didn't go over well. That's what I'm guessing now.
Back in late November.
So I think that was kind of what one of them mentioned was maybe we could try something for like next year.
Well, and in general, city events would be something that we would want to be as family friendly as possible, and that all ages could participate. But that doesn't mean that a 420 event here wouldn't be a slam dunk. And maybe that's something where the city wouldn't necessarily be the organizers,
Right.
but
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's probably not one for the city
Yeah.
to organize, but we could potentially get some money out of it.
Sure.
Okay.
That we would be the closest one for people coming from Texas and places like that, so. They're huge revenue generators up north.
Yeah. I don't think anybody really has, I mean, they have celebrations. Maybe Denver has a festival.
Denver's
Massive. Hundreds of thousands.
So maybe a good goal would just be increase tourism traffic by 10% by, what do we want to say, 2025 compared to what? I mean, we need to have a measurable goals that it's like, okay, we either did it or we didn't do it, and why?
Increasing the lodging tax quarterly or better.
Yeah, that's,
So I don't know if we can do the counts.
well, we'll have that number.
Yeah.
So, and then we were gonna look at that visitor tracking tool, and that didn't happen. So we could get that on a future meeting to check that out and see if it's a useful.
Would it be okay if we got access to that, Steve?
yeah.
Okay, I could just get it from Keely.
Okay.
Awesome, yeah, so we can have a baseline count there. Yeah, I think 2025 is good because it gives us a full year.
Yeah, to see what of our new implementations actually worked.
Yeah. I don't know, does anyone else have a computer out to see what a good target would be? Because I mean, 10% sounds good, but like I also don't want to set an unrealistic goal in terms of how much can we really grow, you know, in 1 year.
We were down 12% from
From 2019. So
2019,
maybe we just want to be back
and
to
I feel like we're gonna take a much larger hit this year. That 12% could then be 25, could be more.
Because it would be bad to compare it to the pandemic. So maybe we should try to compare it to pre-pandemic numbers. So maybe we should try to compare it to 2019.
There's so much trouble in there. I mean, it's a worldwide problem. How are we doing? Everybody is wanting to get back up to 2019 levels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Colorado, when they did their tourism presentation at CML, I think they said the state is down 14-15% from 2019 levels. They're seeing a little bit of an increase from COVID levels, but it's slow to come back up.
And we're supposed to be getting a recession at the end of this year.
And I think that's part of it.
Third, fourth quarter.
Well, maybe we could just put the goal is to have
Just some positive trends.
Yeah.
a
Instead.
positive trend instead of a negative trend.
Define that.
I think that's a good year one goal, so we can really understand what we're working with.
Yeah.
We're working on a moving target.
We are working on a moving target. So,
Some of it's in our control, some of it's not.
correct.
So I would suggest we can formulate some goal statements to review at your next meeting, and then maybe talk about some strategies for each of those goals.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah,
It's like get like a couple of goals for 2024, 2025, and 2026. Because really, we're trying to plan to make Trinidad a destination. We have to not only think about next year, we have to think about 5 years down the line.
Of course.
And that's daunting.
I mean, that's ideally where fruits of our labor are
Yeah, it's where
actually realized. So 2024, we're looking at just positive percentage growth versus declining revenues and visitor count. I think those are our two key metrics.
I think those are, yeah, I agree. Like I said previously, I would love for us to maybe have one of our 5 things that were identified as our points of interest to be something that we actually promoted.
Okay. And do we want a 2024, one of those festivals or one of those events
One of
has a Trinidad branding on it, or it has, it's a city event?
Yeah, I would
Great
like to
ones.
establish at least one,
Once,
if not more, and working towards that signature event that Steve mentioned.
And let me ask this, because there's a lot of, like in Netherlands and Frozen Dead Guy, even though it's in Estes Park now, and you got Mike the Headless Chicken Festival, all of those things. I would love to have something quirky, you know, not just Santa Fe Trail Days, it's wonderful to honor history, but I'd love to have some kind of quirky,
What if we did like a bank robbery or something like
at the annual Bank Robbery Festival.
that? So we dress up and
There was a bank robbery here.
I'm sure there was plenty.
Well, we could stage one, because now and then.
I think they did one.
Yeah, they did a bank robbery.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So positive percentage growth in revenues and visitor count. One city event established.
Say at least.
Yeah, I think if we did one a year by 2027, having a large established event, I think that would be wise. Because these events take a while to get the name out, they take a while to grow. I think we need to shoot to get 3 grants so we can double our money. And those grants can be OED grants, those grants can be, things for the Riverwalk, they could be for trail building, they could be for anything but just some grants. Instead of having this money, we have got to double this money. We've got to make every cent count and double as best we can.
So that, and we want to put a dollar amount on that, because we could take 3 grants and get one from Bar 9 for $2,000.
That's good, that's a good point. We does anyone have a dollar amount they want to throw out?
I don't know what type of grants we're looking at and what the numbers are, so it's hard to say. I mean, I would say at least 100,000, but I don't know if these are like,
I think 100,000.
these grants could be 100,000 each, you know, I just don't even have the
Sure.
slightest piece of data to start from.
Well,
But
we
could
say
just say
3 to
minimum
5 grants,
100,000, you know?
3 to 5 grants, equaling, or equaling around $100,000. So like you said, if we get a slam dunk grant, we have to put in $50K to get 100.
And that's tourism board of Pasadena, they got grants and how much were there?
I don't
I don't
think
think
they
so.
ever have, they never applied for ours. Yeah, which that would really set us apart to
And that
actually
was
start.
They should have, because I understand there's grants from the Colorado tourism.
There is so much, there
Well,
is
yeah.
so much resources that were just not utilized.
That stuff that would come to the city grant writer.
Do we have a city grant writer?
To meet
They're
those
hiring.
programs, yeah.
What I would say is between now and the end of the year, we should probably target what grants that you all would like to apply for and then budget specifically for what the match would be. But keep in mind, match often can be in kind. So oftentimes there's no financial commitment. It's just us providing resources, staff time, that type of thing. Some grants don't require matches at all. Some of them are 20%, some of them are 5%. It just really depends. So if we can identify what in 2024 we think we want to apply for, we can put a pretty clean dollar number to the match. I would also say that depending on what it is, that doesn't all have to come out of tourism or the lodging tax. It could be a general fund expenditure as well.
I think also we should plan, as actually brought up in the beginning, really partnering with OED and really partnering with the services and stuff that the state offers and getting this board on track to having a plan.
I think Project Blueprint will help with that.
Project Blueprint will
They come
really,
down and they make a plan for you,
correct.
which is
So
helpful as we're volunteers.
maybe one of our 2024 goal is to partner strongly with OED and
How does
Project
that feel
Blueprint.
like, how's it measure?
Let's be honest, guys, we don't even have a marketing plan. This is all just been willy-nilly. We have no ducks. Some of them are across the pond, some of them are haven't even flown in yet. There is no row.
Hey, marketing plan's coming out for lunch.
Huh?
Marketing plan's coming out for lunch.
We have that full village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but maybe part of that is just establishing a goal, guys. I mean, a cohesive marketing plan goal. I mean, because that's, let's not, I mean, we have positive growth and all that, but, and sure, we need a plan, but maybe.
Hiring a marketing firm,
Yeah, that is one of our goals for 2024.
That is a 2024 goal, without a doubt. I think
This is how we're gonna be
this
able to do that.
RFP is going to be essential. So we have that as a whole discussion item today. So we can put that in there, I guess.
I think
it's
that
one of
would
the
be
most
But
important.
to me, that's like a how, not a goal, right?
Yeah.
So like that RFP and that marketing firm ideally gets us to this positive growth.
So maybe we just keep those 3 for 2024, and then we move on to 2025 goals and 2026 goals. Because we
Yeah, I think
can't
that's-
do everything all at once.
Yeah, I think that seems pretty
Yeah.
reasonable.
Okay. One city event, positive growth, and grants. All right. So 2025. You want to say that we start really focusing in 2025, boosting winter traffic in the town?
Sorry, what did you say, boosting what?
Winter traffic, winter traffic. So we want to say that we, kind of like the same, because we want it to be up in 2024, and in 2025 specifically, we want that positive growth in our winter months.
Yeah, I think it's like specifically from December to March.
Okay.
Let me ask scope, because the West Peak is not in the city of Trinidad, it's in Los Angeles County, right? So our board really works on the whole county, right? I mean, if there's potential for like agritourism, right down the road. So how far do we reach?
There's a
And then
lot.
you also got, I know the county's working on the airport. There's a lot of opportunity for airport industrial park. So our purview or our scope.
It's more business dev than tourism
Okay.
though.
Sorry, my mind is pretty.
No, I totally get it, and there's a lot of overlap. But that, you're just kind of bringing us back to this idea here, which is, are we focusing on city center, or are we taking the regional approach? And there are draws that are more far-flung, like Spanish Peak. But I think personally that we have to be pulling everything back to the
Oh
core.
yeah, bring them back here.
So
buy
we
stuff.
start at the city center, and maybe we move outwards, but we need to, if we focus on the city center, a lot of the problems will start to fix themselves.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of this 3-year goal setting, that keeping that focus, within that 5-mile radius is the way to go. And that does bring you out to the state parks, and potentially some of the, even things like agritourism could be within that. I mean, Honey is not that far. And there's plenty of farms and things going on. Even some of the ranch land to the west probably kind of get in there, so.
Yeah. So maybe in 2025, we also want to establish a second city event.
What would it take to put an ice skate rink down there?
An ice cave?
Isn't the Hilton
Ice
supposed to be?
Oh, I think it's an ice cave.
Huh?
I think there's supposed
The
to be one
Hilton.
down
Yeah.
in the Hilton area.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
The second city event, so that means that by 2026, we have 2 events
Yep.
going, I think.
That's great.
I'm gonna put worst signature,
Or soon.
because we'll kind of see also whatever comes out of this and how it's going, and then we're looking at adding a second or, leveling up to something bigger or whatever.
I think that's wise. So then we're gonna try to get these grants in 2024, so then we should start seeing some things coming to fruition in 2025, is that correct?
Yeah.
So, do we wanna continue to be securing grants for
Yeah.
projects? I think
That'll probably
because that's really where, by 2027, 2028, we're really gonna see the fruits of the labor hit.
Yeah, I mean, do we want just stuff like positive growth and grants? Every single one ever.
Yeah, that's gonna be ongoing, but I think maybe 2025, we take this intel to make a more concrete, so have an annual growth goal that's informed by this.
Okay. So then in 2026, do we want to have an annual growth goal then?
Either create annual growth goal or
Well, what if in 2024 we figure out a way to better measure how it is that we're reaching our?
I think we are getting those measuring tools because from the information that we received from a previous city staffer, it was breakfast.
I can bring it to our next board meeting. Keely manages it right now.
Oh, great.
And
Okay.
the only reason I don't have access, I want to make sure it's appropriate.
Okay,
And that's really, really, really cool stuff.
I bet.
I'm gonna geek out on it.
Do we need a spreadsheet to do that or no?
Spreadsheet? No, I'll show you.
You would geek out on it without doing a spreadsheet. I usually need a spreadsheet.
It's more digital.
Maybe in 2025, we want to consider bringing on some staff to manage these events or to manage.
Staff is an interesting one, and that's, 2025, or does that start in
In
2024?
2024, it might. Maybe we have a part-timer in 2024, by 2025, we've received enough growth numbers that we have a full-time person like that. Because this is a lot that we're doing, and we are all just volunteers, and we need support. So then we'll have full-time staff for events and or whatever we choose.
Yeah, and plus if we are successful and we continue to grow revenues, we'll have money for that.
I just would hate, I think having more than 5 goals a year is a lot.
It is for us.
Yeah, it's, you know, and like I said, because there's just so much. And I think the truth is, Trinidad has so many assets, it's hard to really just pick a handful. Because it is just potential everywhere. But we do have to just focus, everywhere else that has just focused on 1 or 2 things, then by a couple of years later is able to do 5 or 6 different things. You really do need to focus on just really establishing a couple of good things.
Yeah, we also probably need to decide what we want for lunch.
Yeah.
And who, we're one place?
Is this the end of this session? Is this the end of this session?
No, I mean, it's just in there working
I
on
don't think
it.
quite put it low on it.
No, I mean, are you feeling violence? Like,
No, it's just, it's cool to start a radar that I don't think it's gonna take.
I've had my coffee and my bottle of water, and I'm just struggling here.
Is there one specific place we're going to, or they're picking up the food?
Yeah, so I was just gonna mention that, that's, the mayor called and then I called Kim, so, what are you guys in the mood for? Well, we can order it and have it
You
delivered.
want the cafe or?
That's, I was thinking the cafe,
Okay.
so, do you want me to pull up the menu?
Yeah.
Everyone can pick what they want? Okay.
Sound good?
Then I'll take
Yeah, I'll get the menu up while you guys take a quick break. How you doing today, Tom?
Good. So I'm not gonna stop this because you guys are gonna start back up, right?
We are, and it's a working lunch too. I don't know if you can broadcast that because it's a webinar and we're just launching.
I'm prepared for that.
Yeah,
If we're gonna take a short break, I was gonna stop it and start another segment.
Gotcha.
yeah. Why don't we just plan to take a break till 11:25, 10-minute break?
Okay, then I can stop
That way
this.
everyone can kinda